All right, the format for this meeting is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary's announcements, a coffee and a snack break, and our main speaker. Our first speaker for tonight is Jason.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jason. I am an alcoholic. I'm honored to be here today. Thanks for asking me to speak. Let's see, I've been sober since September 1st, 2011. This time, and hopefully this is my last sobriety date. Let's see, I'll give you a quick little synopsis of how I got here. I started out in New Jersey. I was raised by my grandparents. My grandmother was Polish and my grandfather was Italian, and I am a nice Irish boy. So, go figure. But I was basically an only child running around, and I used to, I love thrill seeking from an early age. I remember when I had my bike, I would make ramps and jump it and stuff, and then I got a little mini bike, and I used to set up cinder blocks, and I took my grandmother's ironing board, and I would speed around the backyard and jump off the ironing board, and I just love that thrill got me all the time. And my grandfather, there really was no drinking in my house. My grandfather would drink maybe once a year, and I remember he offered me a beer when I was young, 7 or 8 years old. And I took a sip, and I thought it would be wonderful, but it was the opposite. It was really this is kind of terrible. I thought it would be great because it's something that oh, no, you can't have this. And whenever they tell you that, you're oh, it must be fantastic. But anyway, so I was kind of a late bloomer. I really didn't start drinking till I was about 16 years old. I got sent to boarding school up in New Hampshire. And slowly but surely, I went from a good kid, as you were. And I remember we started smoking cigarettes, one cigarette on a Saturday, clean the room, try drinking a little bit, and then try cocaine a little bit, and then try acid a little bit. and it really, it helped me to, I was very shy. I was a pretty shy kid, so the more I took, the more I was ooh, this is, and I'm hey, what's up? Kind of doing the thing. And it made me feel like I had a personality or something, or at least didn't care what other people thought. So a little bit of both, and I like both of those things. So fast forward, by the time I'm 19 years old, I have 3 DUIs. I'm a maniac. I go big fast. I pre-party. And then I get to the party, and I can't really control myself. So I drink, and a lot of times I would pass out before the party started. And then I'd wake up, towards the end, what's up? Are we ready to go? They're you have to go now. You have to get out of my house. So I'd be okay. So at the same time, while I was 19, my father was a musician. He's running around. He was partying, and he quit drinking. He quit as I started, which was really a drag. Because now I'm getting drunk, getting home drunk, and he's up, starting to go to AA meetings, what are you doing? And I'm nothing, what are you talking about? And so he sends me to rehab in Arizona, and it's the first time I got introduced to the 12 steps. And I remember distinctly being in that rehab and thinking this is a pretty fascinating program. These 12 steps, everybody should go through these because it's such a unique way to take a look at yourself and kind of, see what's up. And so that didn't really stick, and I messed around with this girl in rehab, and then they kicked me out. And I ended up in, anyway, it's a long story. But alcohol is so intertwined in my life, and it's and it was my love. I love drinking and using. And it became a big part of who I was. I had long blonde hair. When I was 22, I moved from New Jersey to Los Angeles. And I'm a thrill seeker. I love skydiving. I have motorcycles. I do and I love taking drugs and drinking. It's who I was. And still to this day, I'll walk down the street and people are hey, you got any? I'm no. But it was like, I guess I got that look, you know? And so it's the old story, like fun, then fun with problems, and then problems, problems, problems. And even though, like, I went to more rehabs and, you know, it's been intertwined in my life so deeply for so long, but even at the end, it was like, it was the last thing I wanted to look at, that alcohol was the problem. I was like, there's something wrong with me. I don't know, I probably need to see somebody or see a therapist or whatever, but alcohol and drugs are the one things that it's giving me relief. And so it was the last thing I wanted to let go of. And towards the end, I lost my job. I couldn't hold a job. And I just remember like walking down the street, looking at my shoes, going to the liquor store yet again, because I would go every day and get what I could, come home drinking. I'm a shitty little studio apartment in Atwater Village. And I remember saying that prayer, like, you know, just help me, you know, help. And I had a tooth go bad because I wasn't taking very good care of myself, and I ended up in the hospital, and I got sober for 2 days because I couldn't drink. I was in the hospital. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm sober for 2 days. Like, this hasn't happened in years. So I started going to Pathfinders in Atwater Village every morning at 7 a.m., and I started getting some hope. I started going through the book, got a sponsor, and really, for the first time, really started getting some relief from drugs and alcohol. And even though, like, I really felt like I was at my lowest of lows, and that was it. That's the last time I'll drink or use. About 1.5 years in, 2 things happened. One is I never wanted to finish the steps. I'd get to like 6 or 7 and be like, I'm kind of busy, and, you know, life's good, whatever. And the other one was I had like these reservations, and a big one was pot. Like, I smoked weed every day while I drank. Drank every day, smoked weed every day. It's part of my deal. So I was thinking, you know, let's do that. So we went out, did it again, didn't turn out right, but for me, I'm glad I did, because it made me realize, first of all, it was terrible. I was like paranoid, awful, started drinking, doing drugs, and very hard to get back. So I'm very grateful I was able to get back in. I finished the steps, which was not easy, and I think it's a really big reason why I'm here standing in front of you today, because I wronged some people along the way, and it was vital for me to be like, I'm sorry. I was wrong, I'm sorry, and I want to make it right, regardless of their response. And I think that was really vital for me to go through that. And 10, 11, 12 is also vital. And this program, man, it's a brand new life, you know, and it's truly like, just don't make it that big of a deal. I find, like, just put one foot in front of the other and see what comes your way. Try to say yes a lot. And Georgia, our band would play down at the Midnight Mission, and she ran the music program there. And I was always like, there's something about that girl. So one day I found out she was free, so I emailed her like you do. And she said that she would hang out with me. And now we almost have 4 years together, and it's been really beautiful. And again, it's just like the next right thing, you know. So it's not always easy. There's challenges along the way, but with this program, it gives you a lot of answers. So I just want to thank you again for having me here tonight. And that's it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jason. With us, please join me in welcoming Georgia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Georgia, and I'm an alcoholic. Really grateful to be here and to be sober. Thank you so much, Kelly, for inviting me. And Kelly and Guy, thank you for dinner and for the coffee. We were treated like royalty. Who knew I had to come to AA to be treated the way I'd always thought I deserved? Want to thank Jason for his 10 minutes and for sharing your life with me. I'm really grateful for all the gifts I've been given in sobriety. I got sober when I was 24 and I thought my life was over, but instead it was just beginning. My sobriety date is February 1st, 1993, and I got sober when I was 24. I just turned 54, which was like, what? I never dreamed I would be this old, and I realize there are people here who are older than me, but this is the oldest I've ever been, and it is shocking. There is some stuff happening, and I'm like, what? I'll go by a window, and I'll see a reflection. I'll be like, Mom? And I'm like, it's me! My dad died of cancer when I was 6, and he was 54. And I turned 54, and then all of a sudden I was thinking about so first of all, when my dad died, I was in first grade, and I shared at show and tell. I didn't quite grasp that, what was happening. So I'm like, boys and girls, I just wanted to share that my daddy died. And, the teacher was like, oh my God, trying to get me over to the side of the room. And but I used to tell people when they would say, I'm so sorry your dad died, I'd say, that's okay. He lived a long life. He was 54, and now I'm 54, and I'm like, what? That was so wrong. But anyway, I was raised by a single mom from that point on. My life was sort of normal for those first 6 years, celebrating holidays, having dinner at the table, kind of normal family life. But after my dad died, my mom had to work 3 jobs to keep a roof over our head, and, there were no more holidays. There was no more, we didn't sit down to eat dinner at the table. And I've never been grounded. I've never had any rules. I always ran wild, and my mom just threw up her hands and said, you're going to do what you're going to do. I can't stop you. So if you're going to drink, if you're going to use, I'd rather you do it at home. And so at 10 years old, I'm smoking. I start drinking with the older kids in the neighborhood because I desperately want to fit in. I couldn't articulate it at the time, but I had the sense that if somebody loved me, I'd be okay. And that's all I aspired to do and be. And it wasn't until I got to that 4th column of my 4th step that I realized I was kind of a hoe. Sorry, honey. But I didn't mean to be. I mean, honestly, I just wanted to be loved. I watched a ton of TV. I watched a lot of movies. Truth be told, I still do. But in every movie and all the family dramas, once you find love, everything else falls into place. I had no goals. I aspired to be and do nothing except to be loved. And I didn't learn until I had double-digit sobriety that a man is not a plan. It was my only plan. I wasn't going to college. I wasn't, I had no dreams. I just wanted to find someone to love me so I'd be okay. And my first higher power was your approval. I needed it like I needed oxygen. And I didn't get it. And if I even sensed that you didn't like me, I had this ability to read your mind. And I could just tell if you didn't like me. So I would distance myself from people if I even sensed that they didn't like me. I was about the height I am now in elementary school. The other kids were not. And so my nickname became BFU, which stood for Big, Fat, and Ugly. And, I knew I was a victim, never mind. But so, that idea of myself was really hard to let go of. I carried that with me for a long time. And in junior high, they came up with another name for me based on the size of my lips, which I will not repeat tonight. But now, people pay to have their lips done, and people want to have big lips. But back then, I would try and tuck mine in. And I wouldn't wear lipstick or anything because I was so ashamed of who I was and how I looked and the house I lived in our dirty, dirty house. My mom worked in a school cafeteria, then she cleaned somebody's house every day of the week, a different person's house, and then on the weekend she cleaned a church. And our house was the house in the neighborhood that brought the value of your house down. Overrun yard. My mom became a hoarder. It wasn't so bad in these years. It got much worse later. Now, I was not helping. I was not offering to help clean. I was just like, look at this pigsty, But I was embarrassed, and all of these things, just made me, with the desire or the desperate need for your approval, it didn't work. I just was I was so lonely, that bone-chilling loneliness that I've only heard other alcoholics talk about. I feel like I was born singing the blues. You know, I had these really big emotions, not like my friends. I realized I was dealing with some heavier issues too. You know, when you have a parent dying of cancer for a year, you know, it skews your perception. But anyway, so I start hanging out with the older kids, and I was having fun, and they accepted me, and I looked older than I was. I felt older than I was. I was stealing my mom's car at 10, big Buick Wildcat, 8-cylinder beast, cruising that around the neighborhood, going around corners, hubcaps flying off. I'd have to go back and get the hubcap and get it back on the car before my mom came home. She couldn't drive that car. That was my dad's car. It stayed parked in the driveway after he died, but I had so much fun with all of your kids. I would pack them in, and I would take all the neighborhood kids for rides. You know, just like Jason, a thrill seeker. I loved that. You know, when I got sober, I heard people talking about feeling comfortable. I was like, I don't want to feel comfortable. I want to feel like, you know, really good, excited, you know. I wanted to have fun, and I was stealing booze, or my mom would buy it for me. My mom had this little problem too. So she's working, we have no money, but she can't resist a sale. So she would go to the supermarket, and it would be like, if you buy a case of Meisterbrow, you get the second case free. So it was like she had to buy it or she'd be losing money, is what she thought. So she would come home and say, sweetie, I got you 2 cases of Meisterbrow. And I'd be like, awesome, terrible beer, but 2 cases, you know, that'll last us for part of the night. And I remember one time she came home with a bottle of tequila and 2 matching shot glasses. And she said, I got this for you and your friend Ellen, so when you watch The Facts of Life on Thursday night, you can drink it. And there's so many things wrong with that sentence, I'm not even sure where to start. Like, I was still watching The Facts of Life, you know, I was innocent and sweet, and, you know, you take the good, you take the bad, you take them all, and then you have the facts of life, you know, and then I'm like, you know, it just didn't match. But I never thought that I was hurting my mom. I never saw how my drinking affected her, because I thought she didn't care. I thought when she said, not now, Georgie, when I tried to talk to her, when she said, I don't care what you do. I heard that as I don't care. I didn't see until later, and I'll get to that. But anyway, I desperately wanted to be close to my mom too, and so what I would do sometimes is at night when she was sleeping, I'd go sleep on the floor next to her bed just so I could be close to her. And then I would get up before she got up in the morning, and I'd go back to my bed. But, you know, there was still that part of me that just, that was still innocent, even though all of the things I was doing, I now knew I was a piece of crap. I knew I was a bad girl. I knew I wasn't worthy. And so that battle, you know, but drinking was an e-ticket out of that. When I drank, it was like an escape from who I was. It was like, what do you want to do tonight? Well, I don't know. Let's get some booze. And then as soon as I get booze, I'm like, woo! Okay, let's go do this, and then with that, and ATM, and we'll do some other party favors, and ba-ba-ba. So I drop out of school, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. I got all the credits you get in 3 years in my senior year. Before that, I had been through summer school and continuation, because this is where sometimes, you know, we talk about our character defects. My character defect, my ego, was, it worked in this case because I could not imagine not graduating with my class. My ego would not allow it, so it forced me to do what I had to do to graduate. But I want to back up a little bit. I hated myself, in case you didn't get that already, so desperately. And when I got sober, I heard about alcoholics being selfish and self-centered, and I thought, well, that's not me. I thought being self-centered was when you thought you were awesome. I thought I was a piece of crap. But it's that constant thought of self, and that it's opposite sides of the same coin, and humility is found somewhere in between. But I had my first suicide attempt when I was 12, and then I had my second when I was 13, same year that I also got pregnant. And I terminated that pregnancy at the urging of my mom and my boyfriend, and then I drank over that and hated myself. And then it wasn't until I came to AA that I heard, we won't regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. And that's been my experience. Things stay in a place of regret until I can either use that experience to help someone else or use that experience to change something I'm going through. And so it wasn't until I got sober that I got any relief from that. And honestly, that regret came back to me when Jason and I got together. I think maybe like on our third date, because I've learned over time, like, just get to the point at the beginning. Like, why pretend and then get attached to somebody and find out you're not compatible? So I'm like, so I'm a little long in the tooth. Like, I'm not going to have kids. I'm past that age. But he's somebody that if I were going to, he would be the one, and that regret came back that I had that one opportunity. And suddenly I had all these young girls start asking me to sponsor them. And I know that I'm not their mommy, but this is what I've come to find out, is that God gives me just what I need, just when I need it, and sometimes not a second before. And it fills that part of me. And anyway, so, I'm just drinking like a pig. I never drank socially. It's such a joke because I watch Sex and the City still. It's my favorite show. I love it in rerun. I don't care. Sex and the City, the movie, I know every word, and I still watch it because I love it. And I watch the girls go out and drink these beautiful cosmopolitans and flavored martinis or whatever, and they laugh, and they wear fabulous dresses, and they talk about Mr. Big, and I watch and I think, oh, I bet I could do that. And then I'm quickly reminded that the way I drink is with a funnel and a hose. Like I'm with the guys going, I could beer bong 5 beers at once. And it took a long time to get there, a lot of projectile vomiting, until I addressed my alcoholism in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is just my personal experience. But, I would have periodic drug problems. I'd have a little problem, and then I could stop doing whatever that is because alcohol was always there. But I stole, I lie, I cheat. And I still think, even in sobriety, my alcoholism is always looking for a way out, so I have to work a diligent program so there's no breach in security, I've come to find out that I'm not only not like my fellows out in the world, I'm not like my fellows in AA either. I have friends who can do a meeting or 2 a week. Maybe they sponsor, maybe they don't. Maybe they have a commitment, maybe they have none. And they're happy, joyous, and damn free. Not me. No. I have 5 regular meetings. I have commitments at my meetings. Like, AA is and has been the center of my life, and I build my life around it. I'm going to digress for just a minute. I was telling Kelly before the meeting that in this last week, since last Saturday to this Saturday, today, this is my 9th meeting I've been to. I've worked a full-time job. Jason and I have been to 4 music shows. I went to a board meeting. I had a doctor's appointment. But if you look at a schedule and a clock, it doesn't work. But whenever I put AA at the center of my life, it does. Time seems to bend. It's a weird sort of thing. And I'm not tired. I'm sleeping really well. I'm filled up. When I'm really tired, sometimes it's because I'm emotionally tired or spiritually tired, and my inclination is to do less. Go nights. Go lay in bed and watch reruns of Law and Order and Sex and the City, which is my favorite thing to do. But really what the answer for me, and I'm just saying this is knowing who I am now, is that for me it means I have to do more. That's what I mean by I'm not like my fellows in AA. Jason and I have completely different programs, and he is happy, joyous, and free. And he's actually a lot happier and a lot freer than I am. He runs so smooth. There is a massive, I believe it's a June bug. If it comes up here, you're going to hear sounds that, okay, so anyway. No, it's a June bug. It's pretty big. It's a big one. Okay, so anyway, what happened was, I ended up graduating from high school, and as soon as my mom knew I was going to graduate, she claimed bankruptcy and moved home to her mother, my grandmother. My only family was my mom and grandma. As I was growing up, the only vacations I ever went on was to my grandma's tiny little house with my mom and grandma, and they just watch brown TV all day and smoke. And, I smoked and I couldn't breathe. I'd open the door and they'd be like, shut the door, you're letting the smoke out, They'd smoke, and their house coats and Bonanza and Westerns on TV. And I would be trapped in this house, and I'd be missing my friends and hated going to my grandma's. My grandma always drank. She was a messy drunk, but she would say, you know, your grandma's not an alcoholic. I'm just a drunk. And I really thought those were different things until I got sober. And then I was like, those are the same things. I have a thesaurus now. So, but anyway, my grandma used to tell me that I ruined my mom's life, that my dad would be disappointed in me, what a piece of crap I was. And then she would tell me that she too was going to be dying soon. And I didn't like her, but I certainly didn't want her to die. And I learned later that she started telling my mom that she was dying when my mom was 9. And she had my mom when she was 18. So my grandma died from the age of 27 until she actually died at 90. And I'm pretty sure it's the longest death on record. But anyway, so my mom claimed bankruptcy, moved home to her mother. I'm like, cool, Cuckoo Town is all contained. I can live the way I've always wanted to live, which is how I'd always lived. Like I said, I've never had any rules. I've always done just what I wanted. And I ended up getting a great job out of high school because I'm a multiple restarter. I'm really good. I can get a job. I can even get promotions, but I can't, there's no long game in me. It's because every time I drink, no matter how much I promise you, no matter how much I promise me, I'm going to get drunk. I'd been to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous for friends who really needed it, because I'm a good friend. And, you know, like, I'll go with you, I'll support you. This is so good for you. And I would go to meetings and I'd hear people say things like, it's the first drink that gets you drunk. And I'd be like, what a bunch of lightweights. But now I understand what that means. It's like the only choice I have is before I pick up that first drink. Once I pick up that first drink, it's the drink that's driving. It's not me anymore. It's the drink that's making the choice. The only choice I have is before I pick up that drink. So anyway, run my life into the ground. Horrible relationships, often more than one at a time. And what ended up happening is I had one last suicide attempt, and my roommate, I had a roommate at the time, her brother had a little problem with crack cocaine. Spoiler alert, there are no little problems with crack cocaine. And his wife had kicked him out because she was so uncool, and so he came to live with us, and he and I we hooked up. But the problem was he had a different buzz than me, and I can't be with somebody who has a different buzz. It's just not fun for me. And I couldn't break up with him because I needed someone to love me so I'd be okay. And so I started doing that with him, and within 6 months, I lost everything. I got evicted from where I lived, I got fired from my job, and he sold my car for a piece of crack cocaine, which went for about $20. And when I had no place to go, it was my best friend's parents who took me in. My best friend Diana and I grew up together in La Crescenta. And she graduated a semester early, moved to San Diego, was living a big life, and I had continued to stay in and around our hometown, just circling the drain. Her family was the kind of family like I saw on TV. They sat down to eat dinner at the same time every day. They loved each other. They went on family trips. They had plans for the future. And I used to love just to sit at their table and just listen and hear the buzz and see the love, you know. And so when I had no place to go, her parents said that I could move in with them, and they had a room in their basement. And so, you know, I'd been to AA, and so that's not going to work. And I thought, well, this is really about drugs. I'm not really an alcoholic. I always found some reason why. First, I wasn't as bad as you guys, but now that I had the crack thing, now I'm too bad. So that's not going to work. And so I thought, I'll just drink. And that's really that last year or so was really where I got to see my alcoholism up close and personal. That was some of my darkest, embarrassing, demoralizing drinking that last year. And so I became aware that I couldn't drink either. And so I thought I'd try and white knuckle it. The most miserable I'd ever been in my whole life. And I thought, if I'm going to be miserable, which clearly I was destined to be, my family, we're all miserable, it's what we do, that I'd rather be drunk and miserable. And so I poured myself a drink, and it was the first time I didn't feel guilty about pouring myself a drink, because I was resigned to the fact that I'm just going to drink forever. And so I poured the drink, and the phone rang. And it was a guy by the name of Jeff Monahan, and he was a member of the Pacific Group. He was sober 8 years, and he had moved to San Diego, and he was working at the same place that my normie friend Diana worked. And so she began confiding in him about her loser friend, me, and he said he would give me a call. And so he called. He told me who he was, and he said, I understand you have a problem with alcohol. And for whatever reason, I told this stranger, yes, I do. And he said, I want to give you the number of a woman to call in AA. And he gave me the number of Pat Y. And I called Pat, and she said, my husband Vince and I are going to a meeting. I feel something crawling on my leg. My husband Vince and I are going to a meeting. Why don't you come with us? And so I drove to their house, these strangers. I got in this stranger's car who took me to a room full of strangers, and I've been sober ever since. And when I try to imagine, like, what is the picture for God's grace, I go to that moment, you know. Pat and Vince took me to the big Wednesday night meeting of Pacific Group, which was different than any other meeting I'd been to. Actually, it was kind of like this. People were happy and sober at the same time. I always thought it was an or conversation. I thought you were happy or sober. I didn't know you could be both. And I was like, what's happening? Really? They're all sober? And she said, I'll be your sponsor until you find one. And she started me on a really simple course of action. I'm so grateful to have found a home group. One of the benefits of being a part of a home group is everybody's doing the same thing and everybody's saying the same thing. So, you know, I was 24 and a half when I got sober. I'm like, I got to get on the fast track. You know, I'm going to go to school. I heard you guys were going to school. I don't like going to school. I don't want to go to school, but that sounds like a good plan. I'll get a great job now that I'm sober. I'll quit smoking, get on a good exercise regime, go on a diet, you know, because I'm always fat. Go on a diet. And now that I'm well, it's time for a relationship. And after Pat got done laughing, she suggested that I work on getting my first year foundation. And that's what everyone in our group was saying, that how important it was to just give yourself that 1 year. I don't need to rush. Just give myself that 1 year. That first year foundation, that's what I was going to build the rest of my sobriety on. So how strong was that going to be? All the time and energy I want to put into going to school, put that into getting my steps done. Get a little job to go to in between meetings. Don't quit smoking, and for God's sake, no relationship. I've been in relationships often more than one at a time since I was 10, so this is all new. But I'd made a decision, because I kept hearing about the first year foundation, that I would give this thing a try, and then when it didn't work, then I could, you know, be the true victim and say, well, it didn't work for me. I did everything you asked. But I haven't been able to say that so far. It's been 29 years. So I started following Pat's direction. Go to regular meetings on regular days, the same meetings every week. Then get a commitment at those meetings. Call her every day. You know, I had never had structure in my life. I never sat down to eat dinner at a regular time, never went to school on a regular basis or work. But I always thought that structure was the man trying to keep you down, people over 30 who don't understand freedom. And what I came to find out is that by having just a little bit of structure in my life, it's like I started feeling like safer, and I started feeling more creative. And it was the polar opposite of what I thought it was. The more structure I had, the more freedom I had. And like I was saying at the beginning, it was like time began to bend. The more I did, the more I could do. And so I was like, okay, something's happening here. And so I got super active in my group. I was about 2 weeks sober. I'm going to back up a little bit. I was about 2 weeks sober, and a family friend came forward and told me all these secrets that my mom and my grandma had kept from me. I always knew there was something weird about their relationship and how they felt about each other. They loved each other, but they hated each other, and they made each other cry with like a word. They would pout. They wouldn't speak for days. You know, like, well, you know your mother. Well, you know your grandmother. I'm like, So I always knew something was wrong, and I'd been through all of their personal belongings over the years to try and unearth the secrets of me, and I had never found anything out. But this family friend said, I know some stuff, and I was like, I knew it, which is my favorite thing to say. And so I wrote down all the secrets that he told me, and I was like, yeah, and I wrote everything down. And I was going to take it to my mom and tell her what I really thought about her, but instead I called Pat. And she said, it's so good you have that written down. You're going to need it later. And I didn't know what she meant. And she said, for now, I want you to work on being a good daughter and granddaughter, which sounded insane to me. But I don't know how to be a good daughter and granddaughter either. So we came up with a formula, and that's that I would call once a week, I'd write once a week, and I'd visit as often as I could. And if I were doing these things, I would know at the end of the day when my head hit the pillow that I'd been a good daughter and granddaughter. Because where my mom and grandma were concerned, I felt fierce loyalty and love and responsibility and guilt and shame and blame and embarrassment and hatred, all at the same time. And I don't think I could have stayed sober had I not changed my behavior right away. So I started sending this weekly card. So weird, I don't know what to say. And then I, like, having a good week, hope you are too. Like, it took a while for me to pick up the pace. And then the phone calls, super awkward. I would have like a current event that I would have kind of on deck in case it got weird, like I'd be prepared. And so I started doing that once a week, both things. I'd call my mom and grandma on Wednesday and send a card on Wednesday so they'd get the card like on Friday or Saturday. So 2 touch points every week. The phone calls started to get easier. And so I started writing more in those cards, and then I started thinking about how they must be savoring them and perhaps keeping them in a lovely decorative box or perhaps tied with a lovely ribbon. And I found out that that's not what was happening. I made the weekly call to my mom many months into this process, and she said, well, we've been getting your cards, but Grandma's been having to white them out to reuse them, and we're wondering if you could start writing them in pencil. And so I did. And I want to tell you why, though, because this is the most important thing. I now had a sponsor who told me I could take all my problems to her and I'd never have to go through anything alone. I was beginning to have an experience of my own higher power as the result of going through the steps with a sponsor. I had more friends than I dreamed a girl like me could ever have. And I was learning that I had more tools than I ever knew even existed. And it may not be fair, but he with the most tools has the most responsibility. And in this case, it was me. My mom and grandma were in this tiny little house, smoking their more menthols, cussing at the TV in the world. And, I was beginning to have this really beautiful life as a result of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was listening to your stories, and I was beginning to fear my mom and grandma's less. I was beginning to fear their, not fear, their pain and anger like I used to. It used to paralyze me. And so I started writing those cards in pencil. And I wrote a little bit less at first to punish them, but they didn't notice. Story of my life. And things continued to get better. My mom and grandma did not believe that they should ever have to call me either. It was all, if I'm going to have a relationship with them, it's the actions I take. So a real phone call went like this. Well, we wanted to wish you a happy birthday, but you didn't call. And so I learned on my birthday I could do what I do and pace by the phone and say, I know they're not going to call. I know they're not going to call. And then at the end of the day, I knew it, my favorite thing to say. And so what I learned is on my birthday, I could pick up the phone and say, today's my birthday, and I just want to tell you I love you. Boom. And then enjoy the rest of my day. Like crazy. I am not a stupid woman, but these were new ideas to me. I remember hearing Sharon Crane talk about changing the radio station when a sad song came on. I'm like, what? I mean, I hear a sad song, I'm like, I'm an emotional cutter. I mean, if a happy song follows, I might try and find another sad song, like I'm like, ah. But I learned that, honestly, I could change the station. I didn't have to feel that way. And this was such a great lesson in learning about my side of the street. I'm only responsible for my side of the street. What you do on yours, none of my business. In fact, the dirtier yours is, the cleaner mine needs to be. And this exercise with my mom and grandma was about me being a good daughter and granddaughter, not if they reciprocated, not if I deemed them worthy. My actions define who I am. And so I get to be a good daughter and granddaughter regardless of the kind of mom and grandma they want to be. What freedom that was. And so the only access to power I have ever found is on my side of the street. Now, I will fiddle about over on your side of the street from time to time looking for power. It's not there. It's never been. It's always on my side of the street. We talk about okay, once you're physically sober, we talk about emotional sobriety. And I think for me, emotional sobriety is, before I got sober, my happiness was solely reliant on your actions. Today, my happiness is solely reliant on my actions. And that's just such a flip of how I used to live. So anyway, my relationship with my mom and grandma began to grow. It was like as I was taking these loving actions that I didn't believe in, I was loving them more. I was loving them. As I was picking the cards and writing the cards in pencil, I was feeling love. And hearing your stories, it like I said, it just like, it softened me. And I stopped going to that dry well for water. I was going to my sponsor and my girlfriends for my mommy stuff, and I just thought about, what can I bring? What is it that I'm getting in these rooms I can bring? And it's such a shift. And I made it to that first year, and I stayed out of a relationship for my first year in about an hour and a half. I take direction really literally, so at about 1:30 a.m., the night I turned 1, I consummated a relationship with my new fella, and we were engaged 2 weeks later, and then we were married 6 months later, and I was married to him my first 5 years of sobriety. And those were fantastic years because we always put AA first, we always stayed close to our sponsors, so when it didn't work out, we didn't have to argue about the home group or our friends or anything. We got to walk through it with grace and dignity. And after we split up, I ended up getting involved with someone else right away. Surprise. But let me just say this about that what I know today is that emptiness that I've tried to fill with other people and shiny objects for so long, the only way that emptiness gets filled is by my loving you. Getting is good and getting feels good, but getting has never filled that hole in my gut. And it's when I'm lonely, I've got to pick up the phone. It's the actions that I take. It's loving my mom that filled me up. It wasn't her loving me. And what a change in perception. But relationships have been a little bit slower for me. And so I got involved with this guy. Then I had to have back surgery. I'd had minor back surgery and sobriety, but I had to have a spinal fusion. And I was like in that 1% where something went wrong. And I ended up being bedridden for about a year. And during that year, I lost everything except my sobriety. I couldn't drive. I had to give up my car. I had a great job, and I couldn't work. I couldn't color my hair. I'm a little vain, in case you didn't get that. So I was losing kind of everything. By then, Marilyn Slater, she's been my sponsor since I was 2. I was calling her with each of my updates, and so this guy that I'm dating says he'd consider a relationship and a commitment with me when I'm well, and he dumped me. And I was devastated, and so I called Marilyn. It was like, I have to have back surgery, complications, got to get rid of my car, can't pay my bills. Diana comes to the rescue again, helps me. So now I'm like, and now I got dumped. And at the time, Marilyn was learning to play guitar, so she was often plucking away in the background, which is not a bad way to get direction. And she said, this sounds like a wonderful country western song. And she started playing a country chord progression, and she sang my blues. And it made me laugh. And that's been one of the greatest gifts of my sobriety, is finding humor in everything. And I am so grateful to have a sponsor who finds so much humor in my darkest moments. Truly, though. I can pray for a character defect to be removed, but what normally happens is an assignment appears. And in this case, it appeared in the shape of a man named Mike Finch. He was 34 years old, and he'd been diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. And he was a member of my home group, and he was joyful. He loved AA. He used to pack his handicap van full of his sponsees, and they'd go to conferences and meetings, and he was so joyful. And I watched him go from walking and talking to being paralyzed from the neck down. His joy never changed. And he used to say, there's no cure for ALS except for AA. And it was such an attraction for me. And his wife had also left him. And so we became more than friends. Well, we became friends, and then we became more than friends. And I was able to help take care of him the last 6 months of his life. And I did not know I was capable of loving someone that way, because I'd always measured love in what I was getting, and I did not know that I could do that. And it's like I said before, it's like God gives us just what we need, just when we need it, and sometimes not a second before. I was given just what I need, right when I needed it. And in falling in love with Mike, I found something redeemable in me. And so I moved down to San Diego to be with him. Our whole house was filled with AA all the time. I had learned, when you're uncomfortable in a situation, get a commitment. If you're uncomfortable somewhere, start picking up the dishes or help with the dishes or pick up trash or whatever. So there were times I felt really uncomfortable. And I'd read about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross about death and dying, and she talked about photojournaling. And so I asked Mike if I could take pictures, and I took pictures pretty much every day of those last 6 months. And so there's these 3 photo albums. His family has a set too. And it's such a a treasured, all those treasured memories I have, you know. About a month before Mike died, my grandma died. Now, my grandma was the meanest human being I'd ever met in my life. And I don't know what happened. Maybe in my first year or two, she started saying things like, well, you know your grandma loves you. And I'd be like, as a matter of fact, I didn't, inside voice. But it was like all of a sudden she was nice grandma. And I'm like, oh, yeah, what's this? And then I thought, but I want people to believe the new me. I've changed, couldn't she? And I swear she stayed nice grandma until the end. She started just being kind, and I started calling her Granny Goose. She never stopped drinking. Nothing really changed in her life. But I think just as our disease ripples out into the lives of the people we love, so does our recovery. And my mom and grandma were forever changed by my recovery. Anyway, so about a month before Mike died, my grandma died, and I was good with her, and I was able to be there for my mom. And then Mike passed away about a month later, and I ended up moving back to LA, and my mom asked to see me. I drove up to where she lived, and she said, there's some things I need to tell you. Your grandma was really a private person, but I think you need to know. And she told me all those secrets I'd written in that book that I'd never thrown in her face, never found it necessary, but a whole lot more. I'm so glad I didn't hear this when I was 2 weeks sober. I'm so glad that I had some step work under my belt, that I could listen compassionately, because what she told me is that at 8 years old, my grandma was sent to live with another family because her parents couldn't take care of both her and her sister. And so my grandma never went to another day of school at 8 years old. She cooked, she cleaned, and she was physically and sexually abused by the men in that family. And the way that she got out of that is she got pregnant by a man she didn't love at 18, had my mom, and then started leaving my mom to stay with other families, and then leaving my mom to stay in boarding schools. And my mom said my grandma would forget her. She was young and out partying, and she'd forget her and leave her in these boarding schools. When all the other kids got picked up, my mom would be left with the nuns over the summer and shoes that didn't fit her. And my mom was desperate and had nobody. And when she was given the option as a teenager to go live with her mom, my grandma, of course she jumped at it. My grandma would always show up in furs, which was appropriate back then, it's not now, but furs and jewels and cute. She always drove a cute Carmen Ghia. And so my mom said, oh yeah, of course I want to go live with my mom. But it turned out that my grandma had turned to racketeering and prostitution. And she was running a place out in the Mojave Desert. And she turned my mom out to work that business at 15. And my mom never went to another day of school. And she was physically abused and sexually abused. And over these next 2 days, my mom told me her story, basically. And it's the worst story I've heard inside or outside of Alcoholics Anonymous to this day. She talked about these 2 babies that she had. She had this little boy, and she had this picture, and it was just like you could tell she'd looked at it a million times. And she's like, this is Patrick. And she said, I had him, and I tried to keep him, but there was one time she got hit, and she fell into his crib and fell on him. And then another time where she came in, and one of the pimps was touching him inappropriately, and so she sent that little boy to live with another family. And so when she got pregnant again, she didn't see that baby. She put it directly up for adoption. And all of a sudden, it made sense why she was so insistent that I terminate that pregnancy when I was 13. I thought it was because she wanted to hurt me, because I did not want to terminate that pregnancy. I thought she did it because I was bad, and she wanted me, it's your fault, and she wanted to hurt me. And in hindsight, I can see that everything she did was to ensure that I had a better life that she had, and a better life than my grandma had. And it turns out I had the life of a princess compared to the life that my mom and grandma had, and I could have very likely had. The secrets that I had written in that book were that my mom and dad were never married. True, it turns out that my mom was my dad's mistress, which is why the next secret, which was that my mom had embezzled the money that my dad left me, because the survivor benefit went to his wife, so she used my survivor benefit to pay bills. The other one that was that my dad was an alcoholic and a womanizer, and so many things began to make sense, like why we weren't at my dad's funeral. When my dad was sick, we flew to New York to say goodbye to his family, and then we stayed there for 8 months. He died there. We got on a plane and came home, and then I went and stood at the fence every day and waited for him to come home. Like, I didn't get it. There was no funeral. There was no end. But now, it's like all of a sudden all these things started making sense. But I'm telling you, I wasn't safe to tell this to before this. But I was safe now, and I built this bridge with the cards and the calls, and just keeping my side of the street clean, not yelling and screaming at her like I did or blaming her, just bringing love. And so I got to listen to her story and say, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And then I began to have a mad crush on my mom. I thought she was the coolest thing in the whole world. I'm like, what she had experienced, and she was able, like, I stayed in the same house all those years until I graduated from high school. I never moved. She never had one place to live. I just thought she was the coolest thing, and she was so funny. She had the best sense of humor, and she was so smart, even though she didn't go to school. She could answer any question on Jeopardy. She watched Jeopardy. I could call her about any question about anything, and she seemed to know the answer, and she was funny. Many years later, she got cancer. She got lung cancer and then bone cancer, and then it went to her brain, and I was able to take care of her the last few months of her life. My mom never married again, never had a boyfriend, never had any friends. It was always just me. And I took her to the hospital. She's 75 years old, sick as a dog. I don't even know why we were going at that point. And the x-ray technician came out, and my mom said, "This won't affect my ability to bear children, will it?" She was so funny. And you know, I would have missed it all had I followed the well-meaning suggestions of therapists, who of course I lied to, and my normie friends who talked about, you know, confronting and not keeping secrets. But in AA, I was taught about love and tolerance and about tending to my side of the street. I'd spend my whole life being mad at my mom for not giving me love and guidance, but these are things she never possessed. I'd been mad at her my whole life for not giving me something she didn't even have. She told me once, "I envy you." And I said, "You do?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "You're able to have intimate relationships." She said, "I've never been able to do that." She said, "If somebody liked me, I didn't know why. So I would want to try and figure out what the thing is they like about me and then do that thing." And she said, "But sometimes that wasn't the thing they liked about me, and then it wouldn't work." And she said, "So I just stopped trying." And that was it. Sat down in front of a TV for the rest of her life. And so I'm grateful that you guys at first forced me and then encouraged me to continue, you know, just keeping my side of the street clean. And I miss my mom every day, and the older I get, the more I understand her, and I just want to go, "Oh, I get it. Oh, I'm so sorry." You know, like so many things I understand better the older I am. Today, I have a really big and beautiful life. I've been married and divorced twice. I've smoked, not smoked, smoked, not smoked, smoked, not smoked. I don't smoke now. I've had tons of health issues. That seems to be one of the things that is my jam for this life, whatever. I've had a series of unsuccessful relationships because I was in them. And but what happened for me is I went through a suicidal depression with double-digit sobriety because I wasn't willing to do all the stuff I was willing to do when I was new. And instead of picking up a drink, I made like a newcomer. And I went back just to the basics when I was 17 years sober, beefed up my program, went through the steps again, and I tapped back into that joy that I had found when I was new. And that's where I've been since for the last 12 years. And as a result of that experience, I finally became complete. So I'm not looking for someone to complete me, because if I say you complete me, that means without you, I'm incomplete. And now I make you responsible for my happiness. And then I'm going to have to overlap you, and it's not going to be good. So anyway, I met Jason, and I have to wrap up. Next to getting sober, the best thing that's happened to me is working at the Midnight Mission in Skid Row. I've been there for the last 12 years as an employee, but I started volunteering there when I first got sober, and that's where I met Jason, as he said. And we've been together 4 years, and it's been fantastic. I'll end with this, that I've always found singing really cathartic. Not so much from my audiences, as it turns out. And not that I haven't tried. I've taken lessons. I've been in classes, and I can sing. I can sing Kumbaya. I do a lot of stuff. I've done like 40 AA shows in my group, but it's for fun and for free, and you get what you pay for. But it was such a source of pain for me that, you know, people say, follow your passions and desires. And I'm like, why would God give me this passion and desire only to have me suck at it? And so I started working at the Midnight Mission. I started this music program for our homeless community who had no access to music. So I started bringing musicians to play. And I realized through this experience that maybe God gives us those passions and desires not for us to shine, but for it to shine through us, and that it's none of my business what the outcome is, that I need to follow those passions and desires, but be prepared for however God wants to use them. And I'm so grateful to be sober. Thank you.